He certainly can go fuck himself. Fuck you, Kevin, you fuck. Yeah, so that was such a cool show. Very unique, and it's so cool seeing Annie Murphy is not on Schitt's Creek, a completely different character, like a 180 from her portrayal of Alexis. Watching this show, and I just watched the season finale a couple of hours ago. Watching this show, I had the song by Pearl Jam running around my head. Not the song necessarily playing in my head, but always thinking about this song, and it's and how this show was in some parts of it. There are other parts of the show that I'll raise, but one part of the show where it just describes how Allison is stuck. It reminds me of the Pearl Jam song "Elderly Woman Behind the Counter in a Small Town." Now, if you haven't heard this song, I strongly suggest listening to it. It's such a magnificently beautiful and magnificently sad song about an elderly woman behind the counter in a small town that didn't really go anywhere, and then she sees someone from her past, and that's how the song just it goes from there. And I'm just thinking about Allison just being stuck in that town that she doesn't want to be in, and a job that she doesn't want to have, and not knowing what to do or where to go, and stuck in this relationship that she has with Kevin. And I think the show beautifully illustrates, it goes from the multi-camera sitcom, which is just so bright and vibrant, and it's the sitcom version of the show was insufferable. I almost had to fast forward or read something on my phone while it was going on, because it was unwatchable. And I believe it was made unwatchable for a reason. One, I used to love sitcoms growing up, but then I just kind of outgrew them because I didn't like how unreal they were. And just the way they were set up, and the laugh track, and the lines, and all of these, cheesy plot points, and then, a serious moment happens, and then there's the resolution, and then next thing you know, everything's great again, and then it goes on to the next one. And just the way that it's lit, and, and I think, the Kevin can go fuck himself is almost a comment on, or a satire of, a show like King of Queens, where it's this schlubby guy who you don't normally see married to someone like Annie. Or like Allison. And, he can do all these hijinks, and, he can stay a boy forever, and everything's justified. And it's just Kevin. And that's what Allison was saying throughout the show. And it's just part of her disgust with him and why she wants to fucking kill him. It'll be interesting to, if the show takes off, to have a prequel, when they were kids or something, and just show the build up. They start to talk about the history of them and just how they married so young, and just, she figured, I guess it's a good idea at the time, but probably not someone who she wanted to be with. It was just someone who, hey, that she'll settle for, because what else does she have going on? And just so unlikable. Kevin is such an unlikable character. His father is unlikable. His friend Neil is unlikable. And I think what the show did well through the use of subtext in the sitcom version of the story is just how abusive Kevin is to Allison. Not physically abusive, but there's emotional abuse, manipulation, getting her to do things that she really doesn't want to do, but he, puts the charm on, and people like him, and then she just ends up doing that. And they couch it in a comedic lens, but then when it goes to the single cam and things just get literally dark, the bright lighting is gone, and you just see the despair that Allison is in. That's her point of view. Well, maybe the multi-camera shot is maybe how Kevin sees the world, and his friends see the world. And Kevin is certainly coming from a place of privilege, and he can act however he wants and still get what he wants, and he still just kind of comes out winning. And again, Allison's motivation for wanting to kill him, but I don't think it was necessarily about Kevin. It was for people like Kevin, men like Kevin, really. And I think the show really illustrated that very, very well. I hope it gets renewed for a second season. I'm curious to see where it goes now that, it's interesting. So the part where the sitcom has the serious moments, the very special episode. And it took that turn when Kevin found the gun and ended up shooting the burglar. And then you would have sitcoms like that where, I remember Family Ties. I have a funny story about Family Ties. So my dad, when he was, just below 40, wasn't in the best of health. And it took a Family Ties episode where the father had a heart attack. And the show was like, oh, the father was in such great shape and still had the heart attack anyway. And that inspired my dad for when he was 40, and my dad's in his 70s now. And ever since that Family Ties episode, he has, worked out every other day and stayed in very good health. But it was those serious moments on a show like Family Ties, which you think was a comedy. So it was that when Kevin shot the burglar who Allison hired to kill him. And it was from that you saw, the dramatic parts of the sitcom. But then it got funny again, and throughout the more dramatic moments, there were some jokes and the laugh track went off, but it was a very low laugh track. And then, Kevin got the idea, oh, I'm going to run for office. And he did that. And then when it really took that dramatic turn was at the very end where, Neil was playing extreme hide and seek. And it's so interesting that you go into the single cam version of drama from the multicam version where he's hiding from extreme hide and seek. But then in the multicam, it shows Allison trying to take Neil's phone and Neil grabbing from Allison and choking her, really. And then Patty comes in to save Allison. And then you see Neil in the single cam version. And I'll be so curious to see Kevin in that and the other characters where they're not well lit, where they're not happy-go-lucky and jolly. So I wonder if they'll have that portrayal of Kevin if there is a second season. And I hope there is. But yeah, so the show, I think, really... it was subtext, but it wasn't subtext. Subtext in the multicam. Not really subtext in the single cam. And then, it's the pressure of, almost like a Breaking Bad will Allison and Patty get caught? What's going to happen? Will someone end up finding out now that Neil knows what happened? What did Neil really hear? He might have been talking about something else. We don't know that yet. And maybe we'll find out. So... overall, good show. It really showed despair. It was a really good representation of despair, of loneliness, how you can be lonely even though you're surrounded by people. It's that feeling of loneliness and how she, found some happiness with Sam. But, the problem with Allison and Sam is that Allison doesn't want to depend on Sam for happiness. She wants to find something on her own, and that's true. I think you can possibly go to someone and they can make you happy for a while, but then does that wear off? And what do you do if it does? So Allison was already feeling that, even though she really... loves and cares for Sam. Like Sam should have been the person that she was with and possibly the life that they could have led, which is what Sam was saying. But Annie has to find that within herself first before she can go on with Sam. So I hope I'm sure that plot will continue. And I hope the show gets picked up. But very unique show. And yeah, I think that's all I got. You know, it was just those ridiculous sitcom moments where running out of the fancy restaurant to go to the arcade and then back, and it's all these sitcom tropes that, like, someone like me, who I'm 44 years old, almost going to be 45 in a couple of months, and was very familiar with those things, and can't believe I actually liked them. I can't really watch sitcoms in that traditional sense anymore. I can watch with the laugh track and all that. I don't mind, I guess, some of the modern what's considered sitcoms. They're fine. I believe in evolution in so many ways, and I'm okay with the evolution of what's considered the sitcom. And I really like the thought that went into Kevin can fuck himself because he can. Fuck you, Kevin. And we'll see where this goes. You know, all for evolution of sitcoms, all for evolution of TV, and I think this was quite the unique show. So, all right, that's it. So I hope everyone is well. You can find me on Twitter at MMAM Podcast. You can find me on Facebook at MMAM Podcast. You can email me at MMAMpodcast@gmail.com. Please rate and share this podcast. That would be great. And it would also be great if you get vaccinated if you aren't already. If you are vaccinated, please follow the science and the CDC guidelines. If it means wearing a mask indoors, please wear the mask indoors. I'm in New York. I'm starting to wear masks indoors now when I do go out, and I try to keep that limited. I try to stay outside, away from people who I don't know, and and hopefully we will beat this Delta variant. The positivity rate in New York has been increasing, and as New Yorkers, I know we're going to do our best to fight it. I do my best to fight it every day by just following the guidelines. So I hope you do the same, and I hope you get your information from credible sources, whether it's something like the New York Times, BBC, NPR, USA Today, Washington Post, credible sources of information. Let that information empower you and make the right decisions. Please do not rely on influencers. Please do not rely on entertainers to get your facts. Please use the news to do it. It's so important. It's more important than ever. So take care of each other out there, and fuck you, Kevin.